Welcome to this afternoon's movie premiere of Tunnel Vision, Eye of Eternity, which is a very special movie. By special I mean it's a little bit different to the sort of movie that you would have already seen about the Bosnian pyramids, and made in a very particular way. So I want to, before I actually show you the movie, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an introduction as to what it is I've tried to do in this movie, and then after the showing of the movie, I'm going to go into a little more detail as to how I made it, because by then I think you might be inspired. Thank you for coming in this very, very hot weather today. I do appreciate your attendance, because I know that it's quite a big deal to sit here in 30 plus degrees centigrade. So we'll start without any further. I named the movie Tunnel Vision, Eye of Eternity because it's the name of the last picture that I made, which has been embedded into this movie. Okay, some background. How I came to make a movie of this nature about the Bosnian pyramid complex. I already talked about this briefly on the first night when we had the dinner at the Vema Hotel. So I met Sam in South India at a conference, and by hook or by crook he got to hear that I'd made a movie and I'd embedded a pyramid into it. And I think he got a little curious because I'd mentioned the word pyramid. So he went away and he watched that movie, and he came back and asked me, please come to Bosnia and make me a movie like that about this place. That was 93 months ago, 7 3/4 years ago. Every year since I was coming, and Sam's asking me, where's the movie, Susan? It's not ready. Where's the movie, Susan? It'll be ready when it's ready. Anyhow, it's now ready. Now, the reason I agreed to make a movie of this sort is because I was not interested in making a documentary per se about the Bosnian pyramids. I wanted to use my artistic talents in order to embed the meaning of the Bosnian pyramids into a movie, so that when the audience would see this movie, the Bosnian pyramids and the energetic quality of this place would be transmitted to the viewer. Now, I don't know if I've succeeded or not. I've tried my best. I've done all the things I can to make it as intuitively correct as possible. But it's up to you guys as the audience today to tell me whether I have actually even a fraction achieved this result. So, apart from going to Bosnia, coming to Bosnia as we're here, learning about the place and taking visuals of its various aspects, I would need to create a specific shape. A picture that would express the meaning of the place within it, that I could embed into the timeline of the movie, so that the energy of what I had discovered there would be infused into it. We've a little bit fixed this picture here, but this is the first picture, the crystal of time, that I made, the shape that I was going to embed into the movie. I'll come on to that in a minute. So, the other snag is that I am not a professional filmmaker. So, how was I going to make a film about Bosnia as an artistic creator, as an innovative thinker, rather than a professional filmmaker? But it doesn't matter, because I'm going to use this medium of film work in order to transmit the meaning And so when you're going to see the movie now, okay, the quality of the visuals are not going to be as high definition as somebody who knows all the techniques. Exact perfect changeovers, there may be a bit wishy-washy here and there. But I've done my best. And I've had some professionals help me to edit it so that it's looking okay. The other thing is that I had, this is my disclaimer by the way. I had a 2007 Sony Z1E, which any of you who are in the film world will know uses the little mini DV tapes. Now these days, tapes are obsolete. They're so obsolete that you can't even upload them to the latest MacBook Pro. And I had a little bit of a glitch with this during the process of making this movie, because in the beginning you could still upload them to the Mac, and after 2020 you can no longer upload them to the Mac. So we had to do a little bit of skullduggery in the film studio. Yeah. Anyway, disclaimer. You've all got the bookmark, I hope, and on the back I've written just a little bit about the meaning of kaleidoscopic filmmaking. This is a name that I coined myself, because actually how did I start making movies? Like I said, I have never trained in making movies, but I have learned to make movies through doing it. So when I was living in Nepal, and I was living with the Tibetan masters there, I was often asked to help make the movies in the monastery, because like the monks would go around with a handheld camera and just do this. So they always asked me to come and do the narration because of my British accent. Secondly, this led me to spending hours and hours in the film studio with the editors, trying to find even 2 seconds of visual that was fit to put in the timeline. So I got to learn the art of editing through literally hours and hours and hours. We made 4 or 5 movies like this. And then finally, somebody asked me, one of the other students around, about a guy from Singapore. He said, you know, Susan, you've made so many movies now, I want to sponsor your movie. So I got to go out into the mountains in Nepal and to make my own movie. And that is how The Circle of Immortality was born. I made that between 2005 and 2008. And in order to make that movie, at the time I was studying with the masters, we were looking at the nature of absolute reality and relative reality. What is the union of absolute and relative reality? This was a question that was going on in my mind at the time. So let's just look. Absolute reality, in a nutshell, we're talking about an essence, a source, source energy. And relative reality means everything that we can sensually perceive as appearance. So how do we match what is fundamentally empty, which is an essence with an energetic quality, and all this that is essentially appearing around us? This was my question. So at the time I decided I'll make a symbol for absolute reality and I'll make a symbol for relative reality. So for absolute reality I chose the circle, and for relative reality I chose the square. Then I thought, okay, I'll put them together. Square, circle, square, circle, square, circle, square, circle, square, circle, until my pencil in the middle. This is like with pencil and ruler and eraser. And there was no more room in the center. I'm like, this is infinite. It never ends. What I didn't know at the time is I'm doing something that philosophers have been doing forever, trying to unite the square and the circle. I didn't know that at the time. Anyway, nevertheless, I was doing it. In order to find a connection between the square and the circle, I would have to somehow cut in from an outer layer to an inner layer and create a spiral. Having done that, I made the spiral, but you pick a spiral up and poof, it would just fall down to the ground. So I needed something to hold it. So I just quickly cut out 2 triangles to hold it up. Anyway, long story. Long story means a whole book called The Living Pyramid, which is a nice fat book, which I've really gone into very heartfelt detail, all my thoughts, the thought process of how I made this movie, The Circle of Immortality, and I embedded this picture into it. So that was done and dusted back in 2008. And this is the movie that Sam saw and asked me, on the back of this, asked me to come here and make this movie. Okay, my own quotation. A kaleidoscopic film is not static, but evolving level to level, twisting itself inside and out again and again, just to come back to the beginning, and depending on emerging rhythms that relate to the meaning of the themes in each section, the requisite pace of the frequency of the current mood of the visuals and music is designed to positively rebalance the individual who's watching the movie, pulsing deeper and deeper to expose the nuances required to maintain a state of harmony at each level of their being. Whew, quite a mouthful. In this way, each aspect of the movie is woven into a rich, multidimensional tapestry that resonates all the layers of the symbols in the embedded design into its highest expression of universal truth, emanating out of its various facets. On the surface, the visuals contain people, places, what's going on, and other relative factors of the overall theme. Yet whilst nevertheless intending to be continually efficacious, the exposure of the inner and secret symbol is consciously silent, except to those who are deeply perceptive and can read this art form of kaleidoscopic filmmaking on all its various levels. Okay, that's all a bit like kind of big language. What I really mean is that you may or may not be able to consciously perceive like the deeper way that I've made this movie, but it doesn't matter. You don't have to. Don't put your intellect on that, yeah? Just let it transmit itself to you. You know, you may pick up more things than others, but it's not a test, yeah? So how do I do this? What I'm doing is I'm using the natural tools available to any filmmaker. So what are the tools? We've got visuals, which are corresponding to light. Visuals that express the meaning of the symbols that have already been identified in a photo collage art picture. I'll come on to that in a minute. This is a photo collage art picture. I'll describe how I made those in a minute. That has multiple shapes encoded within it that are then skillfully placed along the timeline using specific increments of time. Music is the sound aspect. So we've got light and now we've got sound. Different types of music that are skillfully placed upon the timeline in order to embed another rhythm into the movie, again using specific increments of time. The narration is the perception that creates a narrative that does not arouse too much intellectual attention, but naturally stirs a deeper level of understanding within the viewer. And timing, which is the key, you'll see that timing runs through all these three layers, is the dimensional knitting together of all these various layers, thus creating a broader dimensional vision, as well as transmitting the meaning directly to the viewer without him or her needing to intellectually understand it. So, just a little bit of background. This is not going to be a philosophy class or spiritual, essence class, but just to let you know where I'm coming from here, yeah? So, I'm talking about these three fundamental layers. So, in the octave of harmonic resonance that we are appearing in as human beings, we are in a sense locked inside a relative matrix by a relationship of three aspects of itself to itself. Duality manifests from unity existing in a higher dimension that emerges into a lower one in order to manifest. In each case, number one is existing in a higher dimensional state and is the basis of both the existence of and integration of numbers 2 and 3. So we start with 0, which is infinite, everywhere. Which I don't want to give these names, but I can't just leave it blank, yeah? And each one of you may have a different religious affinity or a different spiritual calling, and I'm not treading on anybody's toes here. I'm just giving it a language that I know and that I've learned, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that. So luminous emptiness, what do I mean by that? I mean the energetic quality of something that doesn't have any inherent meaning, yet it's alive. It's not empty as in void. So I call that 0 because that's everywhere. Then in this first scenario where we have essence, we have the quality of awareness, which is that luminous emptiness, that nevertheless divides into two other qualities of clarity and wisdom. Now what we've got is a symmetry. We've got a symmetry that is, when unbroken, the manifest world around us will not appear. Not yet, but when it drops down into its next layer, we have a blueprint of another layer, which awareness becomes its perceptive quality. So when awareness becomes perception, it looks back at itself and it splits into a duality. It's like, oh, who am I? Now awareness is no longer in a unity, it's now divided. And along with that, clarity is interpreted as a light source, and wisdom becomes a sound source. We've dropped down another dimensional layer here, or we could say another octave of harmonic resonance. Thirdly, we come into a manifest reality. So we've dropped down for the essence as manifested as blueprint, and now manifests in as a manifest reality or appearance that we can essentially perceive of the higher quality of scalar non-Hertzian waves. And then in the sense of Hertzian waves, we've got the particles and the electromagnetic wave spectrum. Particles being the light, a solidified form of light, and sound being the electromagnetic Hertzian waves. So all these are just different aspects of the same thing appearing in different octaves of harmonic resonance. So as the perceptive quality of awareness arises from its purest, inherent, essential state, it dynamically interacts with its inherent qualities of sound, which is also wisdom in the sense of the essence, and light, which is clarity in the sense of the essence. So it descends into materiality through octaves of harmonic resonance. Propelling from one dimension, octave, to another causes a large amount of energy to arise, which is injected into the dimension below it in order to fuel its manifestation. So we have the duality of the following stage manifests from a living essential state of being or force existing in perfect unity in a higher dimension, emerging within a lower one that anchors all existence and provides integration to the other two, because they are not fundamentally separate from it. That can only appear in a dimension of lower frequency. So, a note or any sound is one such explosion of energy. A color or shape is another such explosion of energy, and time is another. So I'm back to where I started. I am using the tools of light, sound, narration, and time in order to transmit the meaning of the Bosnian pyramids to you today in this movie. So here I've just shown, in a nutshell, you can see from the, let's say, the essential state into the blueprint state, into the manifest reality stage. We have 10 virtual movements: awareness, clarity, wisdom, perception, light, sound, scalar waves, particle, Hertzian wave, and appearance. Appearance meaning that which we can essentially perceive with our perceptive qualities. So all these are aspects of that same fundamental essential state appearing differently within varying octaves of harmonic resonance. Here we have the Pythagorean tetrad. Why have I got this here? Well, it's deeply embedded into these pictures. You'll see how this is like a, if you just put out these dots like this, unless you've been initiated into that, and along with the Pythagorean group back in the Grecian days, nobody would know what that meant. But inside, you've got these 10 points embedded into this shape. Octaves of harmonic resonance. One octave is 7 whole notes plus 1 equals 8. The 8th note is the same as the first note. One octave also has 12 semitones. I'm going through this because these are important numbers. These numbers are repeated throughout the movie again and again. But it was necessary to introduce 2 additional concentrations of resonance at the points of vibrational retardation between notes mi, fa, and ti, do in order to make it harmonious. A plus 2 additional notes equals 10, like the Pythagorean tetrad. I mean, the Pythagoreans, they were the ones who developed the sound of the spheres, of all the planetary spheres. 4 4 bass notes encompassing 3 octaves of active, passive, and neutral material aspects that emerges 3 more active, passive, and neutral aspects at an energetic level, making 9 octaves in total, of which the last note is the 10th, do. Why am I telling you this? Because I've embedded this into the movie. Harmonic resonance in relation to our DNA. How do I transmit it to you? Well, harmonic resonance is deeply embedded in our DNA structure. The 3 main layers, octaves of harmonic resonance, frequency, that describe existence are essence, blueprint, and manifest reality. Now, you may have other terms for that, and they're going to all be correct. There is but one universal truth, which we call many different names. Also, these layers, we can call many different names. I'm just using these terms because I've got to keep it consistent in my, in my explanation to you. So these 3 octaves emerge as 3 more active, passive, and neutral aspects, energetic level that reflect micro, macro relationships of each of the 3 main layers, making 9 octaves in total. And 7 times 9 equals 64. The last note, the 10th do, you can see here, is a 64th note, resembling 64 possible ways in which the A, C, G, T coding units of our DNA can combine as triple RNA codons that link to existing triple units housed in the original DNA molecule. Therefore, DNA is in reality made up from precisely 64 basic biochemical hexagrams. And this is reflected in the I Ching, the 3,000 plus year old Chinese book of changes. If I'm getting you right now, you will understand that by embedding the structure of harmonic resonance into the movie, I am playing with your DNA. Got it? Not in a bad way, I promise. Okay, we've got the factor 9 grid. This is the tuning method required to reveal geometric shapes based on a mathematical grid rather than mathematical ratios, known as the factor 9 grid, because the number 9 is found not only as the sum of every note on the grid, but also as the number required to move up and down the scale. So here on this grid we find all of our geometric numbers, but modern tuning does not reveal one correlation to these geometric numbers. A, for example, when you pluck the note A, it would be resonating at 216 hertz. 432, 864, you could pluck A on any of those octaves of resonance, because a lower octave would resonate at the higher octave, and the higher, and the higher, and the higher. So if you wanted to catch the essence of the note A, you would just have to pluck it in one dimension, and it would be able to access all the other dimensions at the same time. All we have to do is add or subtract the number 9 to reveal all the other tones in that octave. So when we tune to 432 and move up and down in multiples of 9, a 14-tone matrix of synchronicity appears. All of the numbers relevant to every primary shape. For example, a triangle is 180 degrees, a square is 360 degrees, pentagon 540 degrees, etc. And you will find the frequency of those shapes within this Hertzian grid. I promise you this is going to be over in a minute. I am just telling you a little bit of background. We're going to play the movie in a minute, just so that you've got an idea of what I'm embedding in there. So experimenting with the Fibonacci sequence. Again, Fibonacci is something that comes up, the word Fibonacci comes up again and again here in the Bosnian pyramids. So we have the Fibonacci sequence 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, etc. So since the single digit vibrations cannot be heard by the human ear, we cannot apply these numbers directly to frequencies. So to determine how the Fibonacci sequence may work in this respect, we substitute number 1 with our first number on the factor 9 grid as 180, which is the triangle. Then 1, 1, circle and square, the octave above the first tone. We have 540, the pentagon, which is a perfect harmonic fifth of the first tone. 900 is the septagon, the major third required to build a perfect major chord, and 1440, a double tetrahedron, Merkaba, which is another octave of the first tone. So you see how, through using geometrical shape, we are embedding different frequencies into the movie. This is not an arbitrary sequence, but comes out as perfectly harmonious when played. So assigning a sonic frequency to the first square of 144, we can see that it actually creates this Fibonacci spiral. It produces another numerically perfect major chord, and the mathematical constant, the golden ratio of roughly 1.618. So 1.61 times 1.61, 2.592. 25,920 years is the approximate number of years for a precession of equinoxes, one full turn of the universe around its center. Perfect harmony is built into the structure of the universe and what we see around us. Here is a chart here to explain the precession of the equinoxes. And why I'm going so deeply into this is I'm not just transmitting the meaning to our DNA, but to the DNA of the universe, of the galaxy, of the solar system. You know, it's in tune with all different octaves of harmonic resonance. Photocollage art. So, I'm not going to go too deeply into the meaning of these pictures per se, but I just, as a genre, photocollage art, well, I started this in order to embed meanings into the pictures so that I could use these as to embed into a timeline of the movie. These are my first 5 that I made while I was still in Nepal and before the Bosnian movie came about. When the Bosnian movie came about, I shifted dimensions into series 2. So, how do I make a photocollage art? This is not a computer graphic, as you may think. First, I cut up the plyboard. This one, for example, is 7 feet by 2.5 feet. And then I stick with glue, colored cloth over the top. And then for the shapes, these are all hard cardboard, which are covered in different colored cloths. And then on the top of it, there are photographs. And all the photographs in this picture, the Crystal of Time, which I made as the layout for the Bosnian movie, all the photographs contain naga beings. Something to do with the snake, with the dragon, with this force. Why snake? Why dragon? You might say, ooh, that's kind of like a powerful, like a kind of demonic energy. We're talking about spirals. We're talking about energy that comes out of the earth. We're talking about movements, toroidal fields. These are symbolized by the nagas, by the snakes, by the dragons, by all this. So this was the first picture that I made in order to embed these symbols and these shapes that I have put into this picture, into the Bosnian movie. Now, I'm going to stop the slideshow here. There is some more information because I'm going to tell you detail by detail after we've watched the movie how I made it. Because I hope by that point you're going to be inspired enough to listen how I made it.